In this episode, Australia bans all social media for kids under 16 years old. What are your thoughts on this? Is this the role of the state? Should they be inserting themselves here in this type of decision making? Kind of over the parents. I believe they should. I'm going to go over why. Are they the first domino to fall internationally? Will other countries begin doing the same thing? They should. And we're going to talk about Robert Griffin III's ex-post from a few days ago saying Mormons are Christians. I want to go through some of the replies from that tweet. First, this episode is brought to you by Go and Do Travel. I am the official spokesperson for them. I want to talk about the Gospel on the Nile cruise. There are still some openings for the cruises in March. We're going to cruise down the Nile, see several temples. You're going to see the temple, our temple, all over the walls of these temples. You'll visit some colorful tombs, go to what I believe is the best museum anywhere, and of course, hit the pyramids. On your bucket list, you can check that one off. Would love to see you there. Let's do this. All right, let's go to the first story here. Australia banning social media for kids under 16 years old. I think that this is a huge deal. I'm hoping that this spreads. I think that it will. I think it's going to go well. I mean, we're going to start seeing reports about the changes, I think, in kids' psychology and their level of depression and anxiety, the ability to connect again with human beings. Very important thing to do. We're going to talk about Jonathan Haidt, who I think does the best work on this, and Elder Bednar, who talked about this almost a decade ago. Let's check out this clip.
So Australia taking the lead on protecting their kids with study after study showing how social media can be harmful to the mental health of children. The Aussie government has enacted a first-of-its-kind ban on social media use for anyone under the age of 16. As of midnight, more than 1 million accounts have already gone dark.
Wow.
10 major social media companies, including YouTube, Meta, and X, have agreed to comply and will use age info.
Right, there's going to be up to $33 million in bans, it says. Parents won't be fined. I think that's an important thing to put in place there, but they're going to put the onus on the social media companies. Look, the social media companies are the ones that are putting the algorithm together, trying to attract the kids as young as they can, get them stuck onto their phones. That's what this is all about. It's the exact same thing as trying to peddle cigarettes to kids, except it could be even worse in the short term than what you're getting with cigarettes. And a lot of people are going to say, well, come on, you're talking about their physical health. Well, you're talking about their mental, spiritual health. This is something that can affect them for the rest of their lives, where they're making bad decisions, where they are isolated, where they're living in a virtual world, essentially, as their brains are trying to form, and they're losing contact with other human beings. Elder Bednar says something really important about this back in his talk from 2009 at BYU. Which, if you recall, it's the one that was called Things as They Really Are, right? Truth, things as they really are. And he goes into social media. This is way back then, seeing what was coming, I think. And of course, you already had gaming and the internet scrolling and things like that. But this is really important to see. And then we're going to go over Jonathan Haidt a little bit as he adds to this. And I believe is the foremost expert and biggest name in trying to influence the world on the dangers of social media for kids, especially under 16 years old. I don't think it's a mistake that Australia has picked that age. I think it's because of Jonathan Haidt. Now, let's go to this talk here by Elder Bednar. Things as they really are. You can see this is a CES system fireside. This was at Brigham Young University, Idaho on May 3rd, 2009. It was reprinted in the Ensign back in 2010, I think in the June edition. This is really, really fascinating the way that he goes through this. And I think it's important to understand this virtual digital world that we are all entering into, because it is, as he points out, against the plan of God and goes right along with the plan of the adversary. Here's how he's starting off here. He talks about how important this is and the impressions that he's getting to talk about these things. He says, I have come to better understand the strong feelings of Jacob, the brother of Nephi. He said, I this day am weighed down with much desire and anxiety for the welfare of your souls. He's weighed down on what is coming in this digital world. This is back in 2009. That quote is from the Book of Mormon in Jacob 2:3. When we come down a little bit further here, he says here, speaking of truth, sadly, some young men and young women in the church today ignore things as they really are. So I want you to stop and think about that. Things as they really are, right? He's drawing this from the scriptures, right? Things, the truth, things as they were, things as they are, things as they will be. So it's things as they really are. And he's contrasting that with this digital world, which are not the way things really are. Whether it's things that are made up on social media, everybody putting forward their best face, not being in a physical world. He spends a lot of time on this in this talk, trying to get this point across. You are leaving a physical world. And this is a problem. He says, things as they really are, and neglect eternal relationships for digital distractions, diversions, and detours that have no lasting value. My heart aches when a young couple sealed together in the house of the Lord for time and for all eternity by the power of the Holy Priesthood experiences marital difficulties because of the addicting effect of excessive video gaming or online socializing. We talked a little bit yesterday about people, men that are addicted to gaming and the socializing. I think you're going to get that a lot more with the women. A young man or woman may waste countless hours, postpone or forfeit vocational or academic achievement, and ultimately sacrifice cherished human relationships because of mind and spirit numbing video and online games. Right. So he's putting us in a picture here of saying, okay, we're immersing ourselves in a digital world and getting away from things as they really are. Saying that a physical world is what is showing the way that things really are. And he spends all of this time up to this point talking about the importance of having a body and being here on earth. So we're put down in this mortal probation with a body, which is essential for us to have, in a physical world, going through the temple as an example with a physical body. We go through for ourselves, we get baptized for ourselves, get the gift of the Holy Ghost for ourselves, and then we do this for others because we have a body to do it. So this physical world is crucial. And as he states it, he says that the adversary is working on us to pull us out of that physical world into a digital sphere that we're not made for. Right? And it causes many right? It changes our frequency, so to speak, our spiritual frequency. And for kids especially that have not developed their brains, in fact, guys don't even develop their brains fully until about 25 years old. This is a disaster. And we're seeing this happen quite a bit throughout the country and throughout the West and everywhere where social media is becoming so prominent. He says, but Brother Bednar, you began today by talking about the importance of a physical body in our eternal progression. Are you suggesting that video gaming and various types of computer-mediated communication can play a role in minimizing the importance of our physical bodies? Yes, absolutely. You're being drawn out from things as they really are in a physical body. He goes on here. I raise an apostolic voice of warning about the potentially stifling, suffocating, suppressing, and constraining impact of some kinds of cyberspace interactions and experiences upon our souls. I plead with you to beware of the sense-dulling and spiritually destructive influence of cyberspace technologies that are used to produce high fidelity and that promote degrading and evil purposes. So he's looking at this in a way that is like, look, this is a warning. Be very careful about the amount of time that you are online, and especially for youth, kids, even college-aged students. The amount of time that you're putting online is going to have a dramatic effect on you, on your well-being. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about that in that sense, that we're being pulled out of a physical world, which is what we were meant to be in, and immersing ourselves into a digital world, and that we are losing truth essentially. There is a truth, an experiential truth that we lose because we're pulling ourselves out of a physical world that we are meant to be in. And we are losing, to a great degree, the function and purpose of having our bodies living in our real world. And we're only looking at things getting worse with AI and virtual worlds, virtual boyfriends, virtual girlfriends, virtual therapists, virtual teachers, virtual everything. There can be some wonderful things from technology and even AI, but there are some warnings that need to be put out there. And I think that what Australia is doing here is very smart. Let's go to Jonathan Haidt here. He has done some amazing work on tracking all of this. I remember finding him in the early 2000s, about 2012, when I read his book, The Righteous Mind, and I started following him, and he started tracking all of this right about that time because he was seeing this massive change in his own university. He was at NYU, and he saw this change in all the students. All of a sudden, what is going on? And these were the first students that came in, really, who had gone through high school, all the way through high school, with an iPhone, which came out in 2008. And then later on, they added, you had the social media, you had MySpace that was being on there, and then Facebook. They started adding the like button, I think, on Facebook around 2000, I want to say 2011 to 2012, maybe 2010. And this had a dramatic effect on everybody because it's like, how many likes can I get? Why aren't I getting more? They still had the thumbs down also at that point. So it was really, it was traumatic for a lot of kids who were going through high school trying to fit in and finding out who was following them and who wasn't. And it had a pretty large effect on everyone that was coming into the university, and he tracks all this and writes about it, etc. But this is what he says here on this post about Australia putting this ban in for kids under 16. It says, it's happening. Australia is freeing kids under 16 from the social media trap, where all kids feel they must be on it because all other kids are on it. Praise to, and it's Malinowskis, I think is his name, the Prime Minister of Australia, who got it started, and to Prime Minister Albo MP, who took it national. The key, as both men have emphasized, is that we all want kids to have fun, exciting childhoods. We're taking that away. How many times have you seen or done yourself, I'll ask, no one's raising their hand here, seen a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, even in a stroller, or sitting on a couch at someone's house with an iPad in front of them? And it's not for a minute. It's not like, okay, I'm going to give you this for a few minutes to take care of you. It's I want you to be quiet and stay engaged with this because it makes everything easier for me, right? I get it. But what is it doing to that kid's brain? And Jonathan Haidt does not like what he sees with this. He's a social psychologist and talks about all the dangers of this and how the brains are forming with being immersed into these digital worlds. The key, as both men have emphasized, is that we all want kids to have fun, exciting childhoods, doing things with friends in the real world, right? In our physical real world, like Elder Bednar says. That's the childhood we older people remember fondly. That's the childhood that Gen Z has seen only in movies. Isn't that interesting? And they long for it. They look back. How many times have you heard kids say, God, I wish I would have grown up in the 80s or the 90s or the 70s or whatever it is. That looks so much different, so much fun. Everybody's engaged with each other. It's a totally different world. And he says to the parents, I urge Australian parents to make this transition one that their kids will look back on fondly as the summer when their lives opened up, right? For them down there, it's summertime now. The summer when they were given more freedom and they began to have more unsupervised fun and adventure and togetherness. He's very into not being too much of a helicopter parent. They began to have childhoods worth remembering. What kind of childhood is someone going to have if they've spent an average of 6 or 8 hours in front of a screen, an iPad, a phone, a television set every day? That's pretty concerning, right? So he's very, very much for this. I'm for it. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is the right place for the state to intervene? I see it very similarly to drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. It is a support, I believe. I think it's a support for the parents, or should be. I know a lot of parents are not going to be happy with it because it makes their job a little bit harder sometimes. But think about the downside and what this does. And I think that we have a responsibility as a society, obviously not for adults, but to watch out for the kids and keep them away from dangerous things. The studies are so powerful and so corroborative over and over and over again on what this social media does to the kids, especially to young women. It is disastrous. And so I think that with what they're doing, I give it a full thumbs up. I think it is definitely the right move. All right, so Robert Griffin III, the Heisman Trophy winner, he calls a lot of the Big 12 games. So he follows BYU very closely, loves BYU, supports BYU a lot, loves Kalani Sitake, the head coach for Brigham Young University, and is very Christian. He's from Baylor. He talks about God all the time on X. He's very public about that, has no problem in sharing all of that. This is what he says here as he's hearing all of this F the Mormons in the stadiums and arenas where BYU is playing. And this is what he says, just very plainly and matter-of-factly, Mormons are Christians. Right? So this is a guy who is an evangelical Christian. He has no problem with this. He knows probably quite a few Latter-day Saints. Mormons are Christians. That is really nice to have. That's a great support from a high-profile figure and someone who is unabashedly Christian, right, to say that. And I think it's important to see this. And I know for us, we don't care sometimes necessarily that other people might think that we're Christian, but to some degree we should, right? Not because we're trying to be accepted into a club that is very tightly gatekept, especially here in the U.S., by certain Protestants, but because we want people who are not familiar with the church to at least have that first step already in place. Okay, they do believe in Christ. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the videos over the last 8 years that people have commented on videos all the way back to Come Follow Me and said, well, not only are you not Christians, but you don't even believe in Jesus. And that's the mists of darkness that are out there for a lot of people. So to have that first step in understanding, okay, they're Christian, I believe in Christianity, I want to find a Christian church. I think that for that reason, it's important to see that. Now, I wanted to go over a few, it's too bad. I see here that it's a response to another post, which was deleted, unfortunately. Would love to see exactly what that response was. Maybe you know what it was. I don't know what that was. But I want to show some of the replies here. We do find here's a cameo from In Defense of Family. She's great, does a great job in here. Yes, we are. Thank you. Right? So again, it's an argument that we do want to win, I think, but it's not because we want to be accepted. It's not because we're the same. We are not creedal Christians. And when people say you're not Christian as a Latter-day Saint, what they're really saying is you're not a creedal Christian. And we unabashedly should say, that's right. We are not. So again, you've got different talking points here. We talking like Catholic Christian situation here, because what I've read and heard from Mormons is not aligned biblically with is depicted to be a Christian. Correct me if I'm wrong. See, at least that opens up something for this guy here, right? Of course, you've got Senator Mike Lee. RG3 is a hero. RG3 is a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers. And no, they're not. Here's another one here. No, they're not. See, it's gatekeeping. That's all that matters. Why would anybody care what someone says? It's gatekeeping. And of course, they have this graphic here that is put out. I've seen this so many times, right? Jesus is Satan's brother. Out of context. That's completely listed as something that's out of context. I remember the Governor Huckabee saying this when he was running against Mitt Romney, and I think it was the 2008 race. God lives near a planet called Kolob. Really? Is that symbolism? Is that real? I don't know. But all they're doing is they're bringing up something that's not in the Bible. And see, for them, if it's not in the Bible, it's not Christian. And yet, the most important thing that they're using as a litmus test for being a Christian is Trinitarianism, are the creeds, which are not in the Bible. Those creeds supersede the Bible for them in their definition of what a Christian is. Jesus is married to a goddess wife. I don't know who that is. Jesus has children from his wives. I don't know that. The Garden of Eden was in Missouri. Okay. Why would that be said? That would be interesting to go back and look at Joseph Smith and his statement on this. Mormons are the real Christians. We believe that we are the restored gospel from the original church that Jesus instituted in his mortal life. That's what we believe. But we, unlike most others, have no problem calling others Christians. Right? We don't have a problem with that. We believe that if you believe in Christ, the Christ of the Bible, that you are a Christian. Before 1978, blacks could not get into heaven. That's not true at all. Right? That's taken completely out of context. These are people that are trying to straw man the church and the gospel and members of the church without really having much knowledge of what they're talking about. Mormons baptize dead people. Come on. Mormons believe they will become gods. Okay, why do we believe that? What are the scriptures behind it? Mormons will get their own planet after death. I don't know. Mormons wear magic underwear and never take them off except to bathe. False. And magic underwear is, of course, a representation of Christ for us. It is a sin to drink caffeine. False, right? So there's just, again, my point here in going through this is just saying, I do think for these reasons, it's important for people to see that we're Christian. And so I do fight for that. I'm not a creedal Christian, and I'll push back on that completely. Right? For Latter-day Saints, the Lord told Joseph Smith that the creeds were an abomination because they distorted so many things and removed so many plain and precious understandings and knowledge from the scriptures. And so we're not looking for those that want to be gatekeepers to try and get into their club. We don't need to try to do that. But it is important for them to understand what we believe in. And one of the great things about today that is great about technology is all of these podcasters and influencers that are getting out there that are faithful voices, where we have been and still are completely drowning in anti-material and bad information on what Latter-day Saints believe and what the church is all about. This is a burgeoning area where so many faithful influencers now are starting to get online and starting to put out more information and showing, yes, we are Christian and here's what our beliefs are. And, oh, no, that's not true, and that's not true, and that's not true. And that's a battle we should feel very good about and should be engaged in and not participating in the spiral of silence. We are Christian, and we have the most plain and precious jewels of knowledge that exist anywhere. And I believe we should be leaning into those things, explaining them, but leaning into the uniqueness of what it is to be a Latter-day Saint and to have a knowledge of the restored gospel. Talk to you tomorrow.